Liberia celebrates 166 years of independence, 10 years of peace and stability, and a vibrant democracy since the end of the civil crisis in 2003. The last 10 years have laid a solid foundation for Liberia as an investment destination. For more, I'm joined by Ayalanesh Billy Tafesi, country risk analyst at RMB. Ayalanesh, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Now, one of the most unfortunate things about any civil unrest is the degree to which it actually destroys infrastructure, which is the backbone of any economy. Are we seeing a reinvestment and a resuscitation of infrastructure that's so necessary for business in Liberia?
Absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, Liberia is currently celebrating 10 years of the end of the civil war, and the focus of Liberians is now shifting from coming out of a war more towards forward-looking growth and investment. One of the ways the government wants to do this is through the mining sector. Liberia is very lucky. They have iron ore, they have gold, they have diamonds. And to give you an idea of the amount of growth we're expecting, in 2010, mining only accounted for 1% of GDP.
Right.
The IMF expects this to grow to about 13% of GDP by 2015. So in a very short space of time, massive investment in a sector, and the government is very keen to get that going.
Is the government working around by putting any incentives in place to not only retain but also attract even more investors into the space? What does the policy landscape look like?
Absolutely. The investment climate in the country, they're very investor friendly. What they have done is they've lowered the corporate tax rate in Liberia from 35% to 25%. They have updated the investment code to make it so that foreign investors are protected from things like expropriation and nationalization. So what we've actually seen is between 2010 and 2012, foreign direct investment has had a massive jump of 68% in the country. Companies like ArcelorMittal, BHP Billiton are now playing in that field.
Of course, I'm sure mining is not the only sector that is attracting a lot of investment, even if it's attracting the lion's share of investment. Are we seeing a more diversified economy emerging on the back of political stability?
Well, sort of during the war, a lot of things were destroyed. So obviously there's a lot of room for investment in everything from telecoms to retail and so forth. But the main focus that the government is trying to push right now is definitely the mining sector. They want to try and diversify away from the iron ore mining, which is very popular, towards things like gold.
How are diamonds performing? Because to a large extent we've always had the controversy around diamonds, specifically in Liberia, but we've seen Liberia now being part of the Kimberley process and really has taken off some of the negativity that has surrounded the diamond story for Liberia, and the government also lifting the ban on exports of diamonds. In addition to that, are we seeing that also come to the fore as one of the more active areas of economic activity?
Absolutely. The diamond industry in Liberia to a large extent remains untapped. So the signing of the 2007 Kimberley process is a big push towards getting that going. In addition to the diamond industry, gold is also, speaking to the mining minister there, gold is definitely something that they're trying to push. We're seeing companies like Aureus Mining starting production towards the end of this year. So.
I want to touch on the prospect of risks, and I actually want to start with the comparative with back here in South Africa, and we know what the labor situation looks like with regards to the mining sector in particular. What is the picture on the ground in Liberia? Is it a marked difference from what we're experiencing here in South Africa?
So one of the main risks that an investor will face in Liberia is the issue of land rights. As you can imagine, during the 14-year-long civil war, the deeds office was destroyed. So there's a lot of controversy as to who actually owns what. When I was in Liberia 2 months ago, driving around the streets of Monrovia, you see posters that stuck on houses that read "not for sale." And that's simply because people are trying to sell houses that they don't have claims to. In terms of the labor issue, 14 years of interrupted schooling, skill shortage is definitely something that will hinder the economy going forward.
And how are the labor relations between business and labor? Are there any tensions there, or is it something that is quite amicable in terms of their relationship?
From what I've seen in Liberia, the investors that have come in there have definitely tried to obviously create jobs, and they've been very accommodating towards the workers. I haven't seen any major sort of clash between the two. They have very high unemployment rates, estimated around 80%. So foreign investment and definitely more job creation is very much welcome in the country.
Ailanesh, let's quickly just touch on the small issue of the ease of doing business. And obviously this has become quite an important indicator for investors as they go into new markets. How would you give an insight, or how would you reflect on the ease of starting a business or being in business in Liberia?
So a few challenges that you would meet in Liberia, of course, is things like infrastructure. Within Monrovia itself, they're starting to rebuild roads and that sort of thing, but electricity, roads outside of Monrovia remain a big constraint to business. What is positive is in 2013, in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business, Liberia actually improved by 5 rankings.
Wow.
So it is showing that government's efforts are paying off.
Understanding that a lot of the economic activity takes place in the economic hub of Monrovia, but are you seeing any potential sectors begin to stir and wake up and potentially take off outside of the center? What really happened during the war is a lot of the areas outside of Monrovia weren't safe. A lot of the wars were being fought sort of in the bushes and the forests of the country. So the majority of Liberians actually live in Monrovia. Right. So at this point, the majority of the opportunities are in Monrovia, except for the mining sector where you have towards the north of the country, so forth, where the mines are operating. Let's look at another element of stability, and particularly political stability. I mean, we know that Liberia is heralded worldwide for being one of the most progressive countries when it comes to political stability after the war, now since 2003 with the first woman president on the continent and the likes. But to a large extent, investors will also look for consistency and stability in policy, and which is certainly far more long-term than some other decisions or some other political or violent activities that we may see. Has President Johnson Sirleaf and others within the political space have been able to create that environment of consistency and predictability? So sort of when you look at how they're trying to attract foreign direct investment, they're at the very early stages. And I think what is a positive is they do realize that they're lacking in a lot of things. Recently, the mining minister made a statement saying that, you know, our mining laws don't actually, they're a bit archaic and they don't sort of help investors in the country. So they went through a countrywide consultation. Right. They spoke with mining companies, they spoke with the local organizations around, and basically what they're trying to do is modify the mining law so that they're investor friendly. At the same time, they look after Liberians and the environment of the country. So we're also not seeing any hard decisions like what we're seeing in Zimbabwe with a strong call for indigenization. It's still really fostering the baby steps of getting the industry back on its feet. Absolutely. In 2010, as I said, they adjusted their investment code and made it very explicit that foreign investors are protected from expropriation and nationalization. So it's a very different mentality.